Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our podcast series, The Truth Behind Transformation. The topic for the podcast today is why AI transformation is not a technology problem. So, most companies are experimenting with AI, but very few are truly transforming with AI. So, this episode explores what leaders need to think before AI can create real business. Our guest for the podcast is Canice, an AI and digital transformation advisor, enterprise growth strategist, and a technology leader who has worked across various large organizations like Salesforce, Oracle, Apple, and also part of global innovation ecosystems. Canice has spent a decade over helping organizations modernize how they operate, grow, and serve customers, and use technology to create business value. So what makes perspective really valuable is that he does not look at AI as a technology layer, but rather through the lens of strategy, operating models, customer experience, and execution. So today we are not going to talk about AI tools. We are going to talk about a bigger question. What has to change inside an enterprise before AI can actually change the enterprise? So without much further ado, Canis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Akshay. I appreciate it.
So we'll keep it conversational. And then, Canis, the first question I wanted to ask you is that almost every enterprise today is talking about using AI. So, from your experience, are these companies truly transforming with AI, or are they mostly in the experimentation stage?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak and be invited to this webinar. So I am honored to be here and excited to kind of share my perspective and experience as well. To answer the first question, I think it's a great question. I've been looking and working with large and small and medium-sized enterprises think about AI transformation. And what I've seen formerly is a lot of experimentation. And now I see people starting to really start shifting in terms of what can they really use AI and deploy AI for. And it's really like dipping the toes in the water, if you will, right? And I think one of the really important aspect of getting it right, so to speak, is to really truly understand what the main problem that they really can solve with AI and how it can really change how they work, I think will be really important in terms of really making long-term, truly business impact to the organizations.
Okay. So, I've seen a lot of these AI initiatives begin with excitement. There are these pilots happening, a proof of concepts, internal experimentations, but most of them do not become meaningful business change. So, why do you think that would be the reason for it?
Yeah, because I think there's a couple of really important aspects of it. First of all, it's important in terms of what AI. I think of it as really a technology that enables something, right? And I think the old adage of people, process, technology is really important. I think in the age of AI, then I would add to that data. So it's really people, process, technology, and data. That's really, I think, the framework to kind of think about how to drive the true change and transformation in businesses. And it's easy to do demos and proof of concept of technology, but it really to drive meaningful change, you really have to change the people's behavior and have them truly embrace it. I think that becomes pretty interesting and pretty important. I think the other aspect of it is I would explain that I think of it as kind of like a 2 by 2 dimension in this, which is if you think about what can AI enable, right? There's on one dimension we want to call augmentation. How do you augment people with AI? Another dimension will be automation. What can you automate with AI, right? And I think it's important to kind of have a I call a practical journey, starting with some of the easier use cases, maybe with either augmenting or automating simple tasks, and get to more and more sophisticated. I think the truly transformative change is when you look at what are the things that can be done now or reimagined with AI that you couldn't have done before without AI, right? And we can talk about some examples of that later as well, right? So I think that's very, very exciting. And that really takes it beyond just demos and proof of concept into really, truly transformative change in businesses.
Got it. So, in fact, on that similar note, Yeah, like have seen that many companies are trying to just force fit AI into their existing workflows. And one of the things which even I have observed while working with some of our enterprise clients is that if the workflow itself is broken, then AI will be basically fast tracking the broken processes. And that's where I'm trying to put a word of caution and what should leaders basically look at first before applying AI.
Absolutely. I mean, again, you can automate a broken process. You just make the broken process more efficient, right?
Yeah.
Or make a not great process more efficient. That's helpful. But I think it's really, I think about what can really drive change. And the way I like to think of it, I think is really think about it from the perspective of the customer experience, right? I always like to think of the customer experience as truly the North Star in guiding what can be possible. How can you make the customer experience better or completely different that really satisfy the customer needs? Use that as a North Star to really think about what is possible and start maybe reimagining workflows like that transformative example. I'll give it, anyway. So I think those are very important aspects in terms of thinking about how do you drive change and how do you start really measuring the right things and having the right requirements to drive those change.
Got it. So, I mean, I would love to gather if there's a, real world example which you can provide in this matter.
Yeah, I was gonna think I was thinking about that. So I think a great example of that, I think, is in the area of customer experience, especially in the area of contact center.
Mm.
Right. So I've worked with a number of different financial services institution where the contact center is it's a more straightforward area to tackle because there's a lot of different metrics and you measure, and a lot of it is about call deflection or reducing call volume or reducing call handling time, right? And those are all important. They can drive cost savings very directly and can be a very significant way. But I think sometimes it's missing. It's really about what is it really about? It's about servicing the customer, right? So if there are ways in which you can service the customer more effectively and efficiently, right? Whether it's using AI or whether using some sort of AI-enabled bot, or maybe other ways in terms of having AI-enabled customer service agent, the people to service customer better that can really and then really address solving the customer problem very quickly. That can really enhance customer experience, and that's something that is can be very different, but it takes a lot of different pieces of AI to kind of bring all that together, right? It's not just about pushing call volume off. It's really about ensuring customer satisfaction and ultimately, hopefully, with increased wallet share for customers. Right? So,
Got it. And in terms of the leadership mindset, like what kind of leadership mindset would it require for making a AI transformation successful within an organization?
yeah, I think this is where you hear a lot of boardrooms and C-suite talk about AI. There's a lot of FOMO, right? In terms of, don't want to miss out. Let's go jump into AI or at least start experimenting with it. I think that's not a bad starting point, but I think it's really takes about in terms of what can AI truly enable, right? And this is where I like to advocate that it is important to have the human, you can call human in the loop or call expert driving AI, right? So where this is like, I was just actually looking at an example earlier where AI is now really starting to change how film productions is made, right? And that's a very interesting example, right? There's been a lot of reluctance on in the I would say the artist community to embrace AI, but the point here is that it's about telling the human stories and how AI can make that possible and make it even more compelling, right? So again, it's about having the human and the customer experience in mind and the human driving the change. Then AI can come along and can really make things pretty exciting in the future.
Got it. And as AI starts influencing all these recommendations, workflows, customer interactions, which aspect do you think should remain central to human judgment?
Yeah, I think that this is really important. I think in the end, it comes down to human judgment, right? So I call that the best strategy poorly executed goes nowhere.
Mm.
Another adapted example of that is that AI can tell you the perfect answer, even assuming that it can tell you the perfect answer. It still takes a human, and a judgment, a human to execute and a judgment to say, is it the right thing to do? Right. And that part, because human has so much more context than what AI can do, at least today, right? So I think having that, I think is really important to make sure it is making the change and driving the transformation that you want for your customers, your employees, your organization, your stakeholders. All those things is very, very complex to incorporate all that, particularly in an enterprise. I think that no matter how automated things are, you have to design the system where the critical junction, crossroads, and decision points are by the right expert to help drive and guide that toward the right direction.
Yeah. And often there's so much of noise around AI kind of replacing all these legacy applications, and even the world of professional services is going to end. What's your take on all that?
Yeah, I think the professional services is definitely has to. It's already being transformed. It has to change, right? So I don't think it's going to disappear. Or in the world of consulting, business strategy consulting, that they're not going to disappear because I think it does take. Like, so you can streamline a lot of the I call it the analysis work or the formation work, the document work. There's a lot of different things you can very much streamline very, very quickly. But it is about having I'll call the expert working with your clients to help them understand what really needs to happen and how to get the organization to embrace that change, right? Again, it goes back down to the people, right? So I think people is the hardest part of change, just accentuate it, where it's about, particularly AI now introduce a lot of distrust or fear about displacement. Lots of the things are coming into play. And it's about having the people working, the clients as well as the consultants or advisors to really help make sure it's the right thing to do and how do you help the people come along and be on the ride to the journey and basically align everybody's benefit toward a common goal and a vision.
Yeah. So even I completely agree on the fact that the professional services industry is not going to die, but it's going to be evolved in a whole new manner, kind of working alongside with AI to create much more value. And all those manual heavy processes which were traditionally core or part and parcel of the delivery projects are going to be taken away by AI. But the human judgment, the aspect of handling people, change management, judgment, which we discussed earlier, is something which these consulting firms would definitely add value, supporting enterprise with bringing in AI into their organization and support with the whole change management and transformation.
100%. 100%.
In fact, there was this one of these conversations where I was having with one of the clients, and they were trying to understand in the world of professional services using AI, and then talking about agent force, and then the easiest way to kind of explain was that even implementing a agent force within the Salesforce ecosystem needs a kind of a whole discovery to design to build, which needs expertise from the consulting world to do that. What are the workflows? What are the pain points? What are the automation needs? And that is something which a consultant like a BA would be able to unlock for their clients.
I think it's a very exciting moment. I think it truly AI to me is seen transformation with the internet. I've seen transformation with mobile phones and cell phones. But this AI transformation, I think it's really about it's impacting every industry, every human on earth, right? Both in work life and personal life, right? And it's doing it so fast. Right. So I think I think it's important to embrace it, but also to guide it so that it really is for the common good, if you will. Let's say.
Yeah. So if an enterprise leader is looking at planning their AI roadmap, what is that one question they should ask before investing more money?
I think it's a great question. I think to me, this kind of comes back down to a couple of key things. One, it's having a clear shared vision of what the future is, and also having clear what are the core values that matters to the organization, right? Those things really kind of need to balance each other. That drives what can be possible, and also really think through what can benefit everyone, all the key stakeholders involved, right? So I think having a clear vision, core values, and think through really the benefits for all the stakeholders, including customer, can really kind of give you a framework in terms of driving a positive change in the future.
That was very, very helpful. And thank you so much for the thoughtful conversation, Canice. So my biggest takeaway from the podcast was that AI transformation is not just about adopting better tools. It is about rethinking how organizations make decisions, design work, serve customers, and involve people in that change. Because ultimately it all lies upon the ability for people to adapt to new technologies. So everyone who are listening on this podcast, before you ask what AI can automate, maybe the better question is what parts of the business needs to be more cleaner, simpler, and more intelligent. So thank you, Kenneth, for sharing your perspective, and thank you for everyone who joined us. See you in the next episode.